Welcome to my 257th video on my work with OO gauge. This video will feature a Hornby Dublo 062 N2 tank engine with the earlier Horseshoe type magnet. A little while ago I picked up a Dublo Coronation class Duchess Loco with a Horseshoe magnet at a local train show. I serviced and remagnetized that one and also tried to improve its performance by placing small rare earth magnets to improve the magnetic field of the motor. After that experience, I kept my eye out for an N2 with a Horseshoe magnet at a reasonable price, as I thought that it would be interesting to see how an N2 with a Horseshoe magnet could be made to run. And after checking out quite a few listings, I finally found this one on eBay UK, going for £40 plus £16 shipping to Canada, which made it about as cheap as I was likely to find. Here's the bottom of this model. Nothing really different here from any 3-rail N2. It's actually much more common to find N2s with horseshoe magnets as compared to Duchesses. The horseshoe magnets were used before World War II in the Dublo vertical motors, and the N2 was sold in some numbers before the war. On the other hand, the Duchess didn't go into production at all until model railway manufacture was resumed after the war. Horseshoe magnets were only used for about the first year of post-war production, being replaced after that with rectangular Alnico magnets with separate pole pieces. This N2 that I bought wasn't specifically listed as having a horseshoe magnet, but I could tell fairly definitely from the listing pictures. You can see here two Dublo N2s side by side. On the right is one with an Alnico magnet, and you can readily see the end of the rectangular magnet and the ends of the pole pieces. On the other hand, the N2 on the left with the horseshoe magnet shows very little visible through the back, basically just the end of one of the brush mountings. This N2 is, of course, post-war, as it has pico-simplex couplings, which were only developed after the war. So we can say with some certainty that this N2 was made around 1947 or early 1948, as Alnico magnets came into use after that. Here you can see the front of the two N2s. The screw that you see there holds the body and chassis together, and screws into the mounting for the front coupling. The front coupling on my new N2 was bent when I got it, and when I tried to straighten it, it broke almost right through. I had a go at repairing that coupling with solder, first brushing on some flux and then soldering the crack. This repair worked not too badly. However, I came across a spare part being offered on eBay, so I bought that. This gave me a new front coupling and mounting with no damage or missing parts. The other one was missing its spring as well as having a cracked coupling. I undid the front screw to allow me to take the chassis out of the body. The screw goes through the body and the chassis and then screws into the mounting for the coupling. And here's the chassis out of the body. As you may see, the horseshoe magnet is mounted the opposite way round to the later Alnico magnets in the N2s, with the connection of the magnet in front of the armature. The wire from the centre rail pickup has been soldered to one of the brush tubes inside the frame. I would have expected it to be soldered to the other end outside the frame. I got out some electrical contact cleaner and some T-cut. I cleaned the commutator first with contact cleaner, then with T-cut. I cleaned the wheels with a bronze brush and a rotary tool. I also did my best to lubricate everything with drops of oil and some moly grease on the gears. I decided not to try to remove the magnet, as the motor appeared to be running pretty well, and even Ronald Dobbs recommends against removing the magnets from these older motors if it's not really necessary. Well, I've oiled it. I've oiled the rods, I've oiled the axles, and I've oiled and greased as best as I can the main drive gear and the motor bearings. I haven't taken the magnet off. Well, the problem is these horseshoe magnets, it's a bit tricky taking them off. Even Ronald Dodds recommends not taking them off if you don't have to. This is actually connected wrong. They've connected the wire from the center pickup normally would be connected to the brush holder there, and they've got it connected to the it would be connected to the. Let's see. I don't have a spare hand, you see. It would normally be connected to the back of the brush holder here, but they've got it connected to the front. I'm going to turn this off now. Whatever. But it seems to run, so I think I'm going to give it a power trial on the... or maybe we'll try remagnetizing it first, and then we'll give it a power trial. It actually seems to be magnetized pretty well. It's not going badly, really. Next, I turned my attention to remagnetizing the horseshoe magnet. I checked the polarity. The north pole was on the right side of the Loco. I remagnetized it using my Dodds magnetizer. As Ronald Dodds recommends, I applied the magnetizer 3 times in different places on the horseshoe magnet, first at the front end, then at the center, and finally directly across the armature, with a little extra time on that last blast. I tried the motor with my bench power supply after the remagnetization. All seemed to be working okay. The chassis is fitted into the body at the back, with flat pieces at the back of the body going into slots in the back of the chassis. Then the front screw needs to be put back through the body and chassis and screwed into the coupling mounting, which is actually very fiddly to do, as the screw is so close to the front of the smoke box that it's hard to get at with a screwdriver, resulting in paint typically being scraped off the bottom of the smoke box door. I tested once more with my bench power supply, as sometimes though a chassis works fine alone, it stops working when the body is put on. Now I tried this new N2 on my 3-rail tabletop with the Gauge Master controller. Alright, so I just want to try now a little initial running test on my 3-rail tabletop of this Horseshoe N2. Since it seems to be running without greatly unreasonable power demands, I'm just going to use the Gauge Master controller for now. Although it's not easy to put the amp meter in sequence with this, so I may end up switching to the other controller anyway. But we'll see. I've not got the amp meter on now, because that's a bit more mucking around to do. I just want to try running it first. Okay, so let's try. That's about 65% power on the Gauge Master, which is not an unreasonable amount of power. Now you can see one thing I don't like is we're getting some nasty flashes here and there, and that's the decoupling. See that blasted decoupling pin on that new front coupling is hanging too low, and it's hitting the center rail and shorting things periodically, which is not good, so I'm afraid we're going to have to do something about that. I wasn't very happy with the way that the front coupling was causing sparking as it shorted to the rails. You can see here that the end of the uncoupling bar is basically protruding down as far as the center rail pickups. I snipped the end of the uncoupling bar off. A bit brutal, I suppose, but I didn't like the shorting. And in practice, I don't really use the uncoupling bars, and a front coupling like this won't be used often anyway. I connected up a multimeter with a current measuring function in sequence with the MRC controller I also use for my Dublo tracks. So now I've got the other camera on, oh blimey, it's falling over. And we'll see if we can run the thing with the amp meter. There we go. That's about 40% on the MRC controller. It's going maybe a bit faster even. I'll turn it down a bit. What's that, about 35% on the MRC controller. Seems to be going somewhere close to what it's doing, 60% on the Gauge Master, and we're drawing about 600 milliamps. The sound effect on the MRC is a bit slow there, but turn it up a tiny bit. Doesn't really make any difference, but whatever. No, it doesn't seem to go fast enough. That sort of vague thing is supposed to, chuff thing is supposed to be the chuff sound that's built into this MRC controller. Anyway, we're getting a fairly consistent, around 600 milliamps here. So we'll see if we can do any better with that by trying to apply a little more magnetism. So, having seen how much current the model was drawing, I now wanted to try to reduce that a bit by adding strong modern magnets. I checked the polarity of the main horseshoe magnet again, and I also checked the polarity of the button magnets. Quite honestly, this confuses me rather. The modern button magnets are so strong that they will stick to the horseshoe magnet either way round, but put on one way round they increase the field over the armature as desired, whereas put on the other way they actually reduce that field, and I find it hard to tell which way is which. Basically it just comes down to experimentation. Okay, I've managed to get the magnets on in a position that they seem to make the thing work better rather than worse. Now, it's a fiddly business because it's no easy way of telling which way they're supposed to go on, because they will attach either way. But if you attach them the wrong way, they reduce the field where you want it rather than increasing it. But you can't leave them there because they won't fit in the body, so I don't know what I'm going to do even then. Eventually, I ended up adding small modern magnets like this. 2 of the smaller, fatter ones on the ends of the horseshoe, and then thinner ones on the outside of the horseshoe level with the armature. I was able to get the body on with the magnets in those positions, so I was ready for another trial. Okay, let me see if I can make it work. We'll put the... Hang on, I don't know. Oops. Now I'm falling over some sort of helicopter part. Oh, I don't know. It's enough hard work, life. Well, I think that's about the best I can do. We got it down to 40 to 400 to 450. That's about all we're doing. Not a lot better, but not awful, I suppose. Let me just see if I can... Let me just see if I can compare that to an Alnico magnet one. This is an Alnico magnet one. It's the one I put coal in as well. You can see. Oops. See, I put coal in this one. Let's see how this goes. Whoops. Faster. Try and keep it around the same speed. Well, see, that's drawing about 60, which is what this was drawing originally. Arguably going a bit faster for the same setting though, but it's drawing about 60. 6. Oh, and it's stopped there. Probably just poor contact. I'm famous last words, but maybe not. I don't know what its problem is. Oh dear, I don't know. If it's not one thing, it's another. That's the nature of the business. But that one's sort of going anyway. If it's not one thing, it's another. I think the problem, one of the problems I'm having now is that this blasted curved power connector track never did have the greatest contacts on it for attaching the wires, and it seems to be getting defective now. So that was why that previous engine stopped, because it didn't stop supplying any power, and I've been having that problem intermittently. It's very annoying. But we're getting about a little over 400 now on this guy, and that's probably as good as we're going to do. I may have to end up changing the blasted layout to put a new power track on by the looks of it. Annoying nonsense. Oh well. At this point I had got the Horseshoe N2 working about as well as I was going to get it, I figured, so I thought that I would just add some coal in the bunker before a final trial run. I fitted a piece of foam into the bunker. I decided that my best bet would be to use a plastic coal load made for wagons cut down to fit on top of the foam in the bunker. I used a cutting disc in a rotary tool to cut the plastic coal load to the right dimensions, and I cut down the foam with scissors so that it would sit in the bunker and bring the coal load up to a reasonable level. And I ran this N2 for another trial, this time with the Gauge Master controller. Okay, well now I'm going back to using the Gauge Master controller because this can supply enough power for it, and I've put coal in it, such as it is. I put a piece of foam with a piece cut from a plastic coal wagon load on it. Now I don't have the amp meter on because there's no easy way of connecting the amp meter in series. Well, I have to muck around with those contacts that are delicate as it is. Okay, so that's 50% power on the Gauge Master. Is that enough? Maybe we need a little bit more than that, I don't know, but that's not bad. Try for that iffy camera work here. But anyway, there you go. I think we can say that's more or less running not too badly now. Honestly, frankly, it's running as well as or better than my Alnico N2s probably, so not too bad.